get that started, reset very shortly.
And that first move was a knight jump at the very start. He played knight f3. I think it restarts, and Fabi will stick to that. There were some disturbances that Nodirbek could feel. Now adjusted. Now it's go time. It's game time. But to your point, you know, Nodirbek lost that to Magnus. There's a huge psychological block in that matchup as well. It's sort of so much trauma, the amount of times that Nodirbek has gone down in match play to Magnus on the big stage. He doesn't have the same with Fabi. He takes Fabi completely fearless, without any ghosts of the past. And that's got to be a confidence boost. I think this match is an absolute toss-up. It's a 50-50.
And Fabi, such a principled player, such a solid player, Nodirbek's game plan essentially will be to try and disrupt that, to try and play into positions that are double-edged, very uncomfortable, looking for different ways to disrupt the equilibrium here. It's going to be interesting because they're two very, very different styles.
Yeah, very different styles. And for Nodirbek, who does start with black, I think the draw in the first game would be a fantastic result. He's very, very dangerous with the white pieces. We did start with the Reti opening, and here we see white getting orders of business sorted, getting a fianchettoed bishop on g2, getting castled very quickly. Nodirbek, in the meantime, trying to occupy the center with the black pawns.
And he does it. He sticks to style. He gets that pawn break that you were alluding to, d5 on the board. Now the knight beautifully placed there. The bishop can come on, develop itself to e6, consolidate the square that the knight is on. And the speed with which the players are playing, it feels like Fabi also prepared for this opening.
Yeah, although the first pause here from Fabiano Caruana with white. I think if it comes down to a calculation battle, Fabi is still supreme there. He's still fantastic when it comes to calculation. If it's more instinctive, then it might be Nodirbek, especially if he's the one on the front foot who takes the upper hand. There we see a very interesting way of trading knights. The black queen was lured out. The black knight in the center fell, just as the white knight on g5 fell. And ultimately, level material, the queen returns home.
Incredible calculation we've seen by Fabiano Caruana, one of the best at the absolute top in the world for over a decade. Played a world championship match, the only player to have drawn all classical games against Magnus Carlsen to force a tiebreak in that match. Nodirbek, his own pedigree in world championship matches in rapid there, being the youngest one to win it. So there's a lot at play here. I think if it comes down to those time scrambles, Nodirbek being the younger one, perhaps might have that edge. So Fabi, I wonder if he's trying to create something before getting to those final moments, trying to get those complexities, those big calculations in.
Oh, maybe if we can emulate the analyst desk and talk about some of the hot takes here. Is our takeaway from that then maybe if it gets all the way to Armageddon, we favor Nodirbek?
Yeah, I think he is just the quicker, the more confident of the two. Maybe Fabiano, it feels like his nerves have hit him, have hindered him in recent times, especially when the clock is ticking down. It happened in the freestyle Grand Slam in Vegas. It happened against Duda just here yesterday on the other stage. And yeah, it was those last-minute uncharacteristic blunders that I think he might be trying to avoid today.
Okay.
All right, but the Armageddon is still far way off, so we've got a best of two to start with, but I completely agree with you there that I think if it comes down to a battle on the clock, Nodirbek becomes the slight favorite there. But Fabiano Caruana, for now, with the white pieces, a slow, cagey approach so far, trying to just improve the position of his pieces. At some point, if you have to make play, he gets the rook on in as well. You want to try to strike in the center, right? With d4 completely under control, Fabi's got to have the f4 break on his radar.
Yeah, we're looking for this white pawn to step forward in the near future. It's just hard to imagine any other productive plan. White's slightly cramped for space here. Black has what we call the Maroxy bind. Normally it's from the white side, but these black pawns on c5, e5, they just prevent most of the white pieces from having any active prospects here.
I was going to say something very similar in that if you take a look at the amount of space, you take a look at where the pieces are positioned and how happy the players would be, it does feel very much like Black is very happy out of this opening, maybe equalizing and then some against White here. And the pawn structure is just super solid. The bishops are very versatile in the middle of the board. They could go either way. There's no obvious weaknesses. We've got two major pieces on the half-open file there. Black is looking so unbelievably solid.
And this opening, this pawn structure, now Fabi finally breaking forward. F for Fabi, he pushes f4. But this opening, it's exactly a accelerated dragon, but with colors reversed. And this does not have a great reputation for the side with the structure that Fabi has gone for. I do feel that he was kind of move order tricked in the opening, Fabiano. It felt like he kind of walked into this structure, which is very comfortable for black. That black knight in the center, now beautiful. If traded off, white will lose the dark squared bishop. And again, yes, he got the pawn break in, but it hasn't really helped the white pieces and their scope.
Now Nodirbek continues with the avalanche now on the left side. You know, again, we speak about these pawn islands. Fabi with 3 pawn islands, Nodirbek with only 2, a healthier pawn formation, which is left with open lines in the center, and each and every minor and major of Nodirbek occupies one of those central squares. So things a lot more harmonious in black's camp. Knight d4 doing a beautiful job of threatening to win a bishop pair. If you want to get rid of that knight, never an easy decision to make. And Nodirbek, he also keeps the pressure on the clock.
He absolutely does. Currently playing with 8 minutes on the clock to Fabiano's 7. And if you take a look at the position on the board as well, this is just absolutely delightful. You can see black is clearly angling for some breakthrough. Potentially c4, the a4 pawn could, the a pawn could get shoved up at some point as well. Maybe even eyeing up that side. We've got f5 coming in as well. The plans for black look relatively straightforward to conceptualize. Even the ones that don't work, you can at least see really quickly. Whereas for white, if you're looking for where the next break comes from, you're almost watching behind your back a little bit because it's a lot more reactive.
Yeah, good luck finding any active moves if you're reduced to retreating like this. The white queen took a step back. Now the white knight retreats. It looks like he's setting up for the next game, almost, Fabiano. That knight retreat does at least open up the possibility of a pawn push, kicking away the black knight, at least taking back some of his territory, Fabiano. But ultimately, again, it looks very passive. It's not his style. That's the main thing. Fabiano is a very principled classical player. They said it in the studio earlier. He likes kind of going for a plan, pushing it forward, backing it up with calculation. Here, he's just already a bit on the ropes. He's trying to just cling on to this game.
You can almost feel the discomfort through the moves, which is not something you tend to say often. The players are the emotional ones, but here you can almost feel it on the chessboard.
100%. You're on spot there. You know, retreating the knight to push that pawn, creating these central weaknesses. Both e3, d3 can come under so much attack. The queen was hinting at it. The rook had to slide over to defend d3. The black knight now jumping over, not attacking one, but 2 pawns on the board. The last 2 moves that Fabi has played has created so many weaknesses, but it was also the only way to kick that knight out of that central stronghold. I think Nodirbek is loving his position right now.
Yeah, this has been a disaster in terms of the opening for Fabiano. He's not busted yet, he's not dead lost, but he is in a lot of trouble. And okay, interesting decision. He's saying to Nodirbek, please grab my pawn. You'll walk into a pin, but this would backfire. Nodirbek here, he might need to retreat in order to preserve his advantage. The most tempting move doesn't work here for black due to a cool double attack. The black knight is hit. If it does take this pawn, the white queen will come out to c3, threatening checkmate, hitting the g7 square and hitting the knight on d3. This would give white a huge advantage, winning material, and there we would see a checkmate. That's the analysis board on the right there. But if we go back to the live board, we see that Nodirbek, of course, he spotted that one, and he retreated his knight instead. And it looks like he's lost a couple of moves, but the white b3 pawn now very loose.
The 4 pawns, you know, which are on the 3rd rank for Fabi, with all these pawn moves that he's made, a3, b3, d3, e3, all now can be attacked. There's a checkmate in one being threatened, an idea that you earlier highlighted, you know, with the bishop and the queen setting up a battery. So 1 move threat, a simple response would be challenge that queen with the dark squared bishop. Bishop f6, you would have to calculate some lines, what happens after queen takes pawn, but that would line up the queen against the black rook, should not work for white.
Yeah, the white queen cannot really get greedy there. He does play it, Nodirbek. Queen takes pawn would backfire after a knight jump. The black knight could jump in to the center. The white queen would be very embarrassed. Fabiano more likely to retreat his queen. There we go. And still it is black with the advantage.
Still hunting for that elusive plan. We've got a couple of tactics coming out of the woodwork, a couple of things to make Nodirbek think on the spot and respond. The problem is Nodirbek's able to respond with tempo. Fabi now moving the queen back to c2, and it just feels like the there's no one or two moves that gets Fabi into the driver's seat here. Let's be clear. His position is quite cramped. The rooks aren't necessarily very coordinated. The knight on f1, we still need to figure out where that's going in the long term. But there is a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, because at least the rooks are in the back rank in the 7th. You can move them across to the D line. There's potential there. A pawn break at the right moment could release e3 for the knight. You can see all of these things happening, but they need a bit of time, 2 or 3 critical moves that he just doesn't have right now.
He absolutely doesn't have it, right? Because each of those pawns are about to come under so much fire. Nodirbek is also setting up batteries of his own. Queen f7 is a big idea on the board. b3 weakened because Nodirbek provoked that move a2 to a3. So that was something that had to be taken care of. And this is the first positional strategic win right there. He gets the bishop pair in an open position, more space on the board, easy targets, rooks and queens beautifully placed. Fabi in big trouble.
Fabiano, I can't even remember if he's moved a piece past his 3rd rank. Maybe he did, it just got captured a bit earlier. He did bring his rook forward, but had to retreat. Fabiano's pieces look very, very sad. But here he's trying to break out. He's trying to trade off some pawns to alleviate the pressure. And there we go, he does trade. Maybe a slight improvement for Fabiano, but it does allow the black rook in. That is not good news. And Nodirbek a moment ago, his heart rate was so high, almost at the 150 mark, because he smells blood. He senses that striking with black here will turn the match in his favor.
And he's such an energetic player, right? Every move coming in with a tempo. Now, it almost looks like after rook b3, it's a double attack that might win the queen and the pawn, one of the 2 pieces, well, the pawn on the board. But Fabi has a resource. Rook b3 will be met by rook b2, just making sure that things remain under control. And I wonder if Nodirbek might have missed that as he slows down.
And the threat against the pawn on e3 isn't a true threat anyway, because the knight on f1, even though we were saying that looked weird earlier, it is keeping everything together here. So it does buy Fabi a little bit of time to interpose and counter those threats. So this might be the opening that Fabi needs to breathe some life into his position.
Yeah, knight on f1 is no fun, as they sometimes say, but here at least it does hold things together. It's the glue for now in his defensive efforts. And yeah, the longer this game goes on without Nodirbek cashing in, kind of transforming his advantage, maybe winning a pawn, the more hope Fabiano will get. The black queen slightly improves itself.
It's been impressive the way Nodirbek has provoked Fabiano with all the pawn moves, you know, and every pawn move has its own set of consequences. The last one, the d4 move, leaves a c4 square behind for one of Nodirbek's pieces to fall on to build more pressure. If we just sort of translate the storyline of this move, has been a maneuvering game by black, provoking weaknesses by Fabi.
Yes, for sure. And while provoking those weaknesses, he's also taken up so much space as well. It's not just provoking the weaknesses, but allowing Fabi to counterpunch elsewhere. It's not like your traditional kingside versus queenside development. He's just been squeezing Fabi out of the opening.
Yeah, very impressive. Not just squeezing him on the board, but the clock too. Fabiano isn't known for loving these kind of situations where it's a race against the clock. He wants to play principled moves. At least though he is getting some double attacks in. This does hit the black rook and the a7 pawn. Double attack, black can retreat the rook to defend, or Nodirbek can say, take that, take my pawn, and go on the attack with his queen as well. But no, he retreats. At least Fabiano, there we go, moving forward. Although that white queen does make a bit of an odd impression on the edge of the board. Slight frown from Nodirbek. Fabi, he's trying to turn the initiative here.
Again, every single move of Fabi has come in with a threat. Well, the queen dances at least. Queen a1 hit the a7 pawn, and now there's another pawn under attack, forcing one of Nodirbek's pieces to fall back to defend it. He uses the pawn, frees up his own rook as well. And I think, you know, we see these inaccuracies. The cross appear. But David, from a human perspective, these are all very practical decisions, keeping the clock also as a factor. You want to make them quickly.
Yeah, talking of quick moves, Nodirbek was ready, almost a pre-move there, bringing his bishop back home to its starting square, just to hold the fort. That queen side now under lock and key for black, and attention will switch back towards the center.
I think that it makes a lot of sense to play that move, because once the queen went to a5, the problem was the rooks. You didn't have a queen supporting either rook getting to the c file, so Fabi hasn't been trying to contest that open file. At least now, things like rook c1 become a possibility because the queen has come back. While the queen was on a5, that wasn't going to happen. The rooks couldn't get there on their own.
And now might be the only chance he gets to challenge. He plays a very passive move though, Fabiano. Just defends his pawn. Maybe he was worried about his queenside dropping. But ultimately, as long as black controls the open files, the bishop's controlling all the squares, looking fantastic for Nodirbek.
And again, he was just ready with his response. You know, Fabi defends that b4 pawn. He immediately played a slow, soft improving move, just getting out of the way of any checks on the a to g8 diagonal, puts his king on a safe square, now comes back to improve his bishop, potentially eyeing the c8 square for his rook, says no exchanges, you're down on the clock, I want as many pieces on the board.
Given a question mark, this last move for white, the knight will most likely have to return home. Look at the black dart square bishop, the power it's exerting. White's pawn chain here, falling potentially. The base is hit. That knight will be recaptured. He's just choosing by rook or by pawn. And ultimately, it's e3. That is the landing spot for the black pieces.
And you've got a beautiful open file to line up all your majors, to start targeting it more and more and more till it falls. He first decides, I'm happy with the rook trade to get away, to get rid of one of those defenses as well. He's going to slide the rook back to defend e3. And this might be the moment for Fabi to think about how can he double, triple down on that attack, or will he switch focus to another weakness, the b4 pawn?
Yeah, it's black's move here, and apparently there's one way to land almost a knockout, and it is a deflection motif for Nodirbek if he pushes his a pawn forward.
Oh, wow.
Whoa, he didn't find it. There was a pin. The white queen would have been lured away from the e3 square. Instead, Fabiano clings on here. Black's gonna pawn up, but it could have been more.
It could have been a lot more. That was a super strong move available. A5 would have put Fabi under so much pressure. The one resource Fabi has is the opposite color bishop complex, right? If the majors are off the board, that gives the position huge drawing tendencies. But as far as the queens and the rook exist, it's still big advantage to Nodirbek. Now the a pawn, joining the party, bringing the pressure on. Push that pawn. Can you go a4 here?
I think you can keep going. He's got double the amount of time as Fabiano as well.
That's going to be the extra piece in this position, right? The fact that he's almost on 3 minutes to Fabiano's minute and a half right now means that, and the plan's really simple, right? Find a way to push the a pawn. This isn't stuff that's going to send you into the tank thinking about your moves for a couple of minutes. The plan is very simple as well.
Yeah, two plans. Push the a pawn, but also go for the white e3 pawn, the base of the chain. The black rook soon will land on the b3 square, trying to break through. But for now, Fabi's holding things together as he hopes to survive on the clock. These players, they were watching the Hikaru Nakamura Wei Yi clash. They know that flagging is going to be so important. Maybe Fabi hoping now, speeding up slightly, that that might be his route out of this game.
And this is something Ivanka mentioned, right? Having this no increment, no bonus time just brings in that sporting element to chess. And you've got to love it because clock management by the very best in the world has to be a skill that you have to have. It shouldn't be made easy for you.
Yes, and I mean, the Esports World Cup is really bringing that to the fore for everyone to see as well. It's produced such amazing, exciting matchups, and this is no exception. Now starting to turn the screw. Bishop takes d4. We inch closer and closer to Fabi's back rank. And look at this, another retreating move, admittedly harmonizing the queen and rook. But this is feeling like it could be too little, too late. The rook is pinned to the king. Fabi can't get off his half of the board.
That was the clincher. The moment Fabiano was about to get active, the rooks disappear, and Nodirbek now, he's got a clear run through. That black pawn is sprinting forward to promotion. No real counterplay. At the moment you are attacking this one, the c pawn can also move. There are no checks against the black king, which will hide on dart squares.
2 extra pawns for black and both unstoppable. He starts by pushing one of them. Fabi desperately trying to improve the position of his queen, but he's allowing some checks to Nodirbek himself, which can assist the c-pawn from moving ahead. But Nodirbek keeps his queen closer to the king, advances the other pawn. Whoa, he's playing with his king.
Ooh.
That's brave.
Very brave. Now the white bishop is actually doing a very good job, a dual-purpose role of stopping the 2 black pawns. We'll see a flurry of checks now. The black queen checking the white king. A queen trade would most likely lose the game for Fabiano. You cannot stop the pawns. Instead, the checks continue. At least there's a ray of hope here. 40 seconds, though, against 1 minute 15.
That's the biggest problem here for Fabiano Caruana. He is under 40 seconds right now as the checks continue. The black king, where will it find its hiding space? The queen blocks it for now. Queen trade would be game over. He keeps the queens on. He has to.
But the checks have dried up. No more ways to attack that black king. The black bishop needs to be improved. Nodirbek is sorting that out. Watch out. The black queen is threatening to dive in with a check now. any queen trades, it's game over. Even without the black bishop, the black pawns will overwhelm the white bishop. And there we go. Fabi hides.
He hides, but he can't hide on the clock. 24 seconds to Nodirbek's 1 minute right now. He had to get the king to safety. Nodirbek, he takes a pause. He knows that this should be winning. He's trying to calculate. He's trying to force the matters. He comes in with his queen. Black's king beautifully placed. Absolutely safe on 8-6. You've got the dark squared bishop. Place everything on dark squares.
White queen could not have moved there without allowing a check on the f1 square, so Fabi uses his bishop to stop any checks. The black queen retreats. Ooh, you got to watch out. There were some checks in the air there, but the players are getting nervous. It's all about the clock. Nodirbek just wants to flag Fabi now, down to 12 seconds.
He can come in with his queen. He can start threatening checkmates of his own on G3. And Fabi, he's giving up. Nodirbek Abdusattorov is taking the win in game 1.
Game number 1 goes the way of Navi. Nodirbek Abdusattorov doing an incredible job there, putting Caruana under such immense time pressure. That was absolutely incredible. Now, how are we going to turn this around? It felt like Fabi, let's call it what it is. He wasn't comfortable for the entirety of that game. This was very different from the last match. It wasn't constantly topsy-turvy. Fabi felt like he didn't get a word in edgeways, so he needs to think of how he changes his approach to turn that around in game number 2.
A bad start for Fabiano Caruana. He had to resign. His checkmate was incoming on the G3 square, but ultimately it was a power-packed performance from Nodirbek. He sees the advantage from the opening with black. After 10 moves, he already was better and never let Fabiano off the hook. It was never Fabiano's type of position, and he paid the price.
Last move, the power move, queen f2. No way to defend the checkmate there. And I have to say, Nodirbek is in boss mode. He looks like a superstar right now. He looks so chill. You know, he's playing against one of the best. He gets the job done in game 1 with the black pieces. Sort of pushing for the edge from the very start, keeping the pressure on the clock, taking those dynamic positions. You know, just never moving himself away from the gas, from the pedal right there. And now he needs only a draw to make it to the quarterfinals.
And the good news is Fabi has the character, has the perseverance, has the experience to be able to come back from this, but he can't necessarily rely on, I'm just going to do the same thing and hope it goes better, given how uncomfortable he felt out of the opening. So what changes now? That's the tough question. What is he going to do differently?
I feel that Fabi needs to do one of two things. He needs to either get on the front foot as early as possible. Nodirbek doesn't like to defend, or you go to a very dry endgame, you keep as many pieces on the board as possible, and you hope to do to Nodirbek what Magnus did to him yesterday. Either way, no guarantees. Either way, Fabi needs to play with a bit more energy. It felt like there he was a bit deflated, very passive with his pieces, never got into the game, and that needs to change. With black, though, it's not going to be easy.
He has to play the anti-young player chess, you know, just keep things under control, try to play the long game, but the problem will be with the clock, because clearly it's Nodirbek who's up on that. If that's your strategy, you need to make the moves fast. We've got the moves coming in here, fast and quick. It's the Alapin opening, and the knight was attacked, moves to the center of the board. This is all theory. So B6, trying to get the bishop to the longest diagonal. Bishop B7 is where it will land.
See the base of the pawn chain there, d4, very, very thematic. Knight c3, of course. If black captures there, we simply go with the recapture. And we chuck h4 out there, nice and early. Let's get it on.
Makes me wonder who's the player who's playing for a win here, because it's supposed to be Fabi, but Nodirbek going all out with that h-pawn early on, you know, making his intentions clear, making a statement, I need only a draw, but I don't care about that. I still want my brand of chess on the board.
Hey, like we said earlier, right? The best defense and all of that. Nodirbek doesn't like to defend, so what's the best way to avoid doing that? We're just going to attack, attack, attack. Harry the h-pawn, h4, h5, h6, force. We've had 3 h-pawn moves by move 11. This is certainly a statement of intent.
It really is. And the idea of pushing the h-pawn is not only going all the way towards black's camp, but also create squares to develop your rook with a rook lift. You know, a potential attack on the g line. So it doesn't have to be castling the traditional route to get the pieces into the game. So a decision now by Nodirbek. Will he go all out with the rook lift? He first does a trade on d6, improves the queen, keeping it flexible with his king.
Now, as much as I want to keep hyping this up, Tanya, I do think you've advanced the h-pawn to h5, so castling kingside, You've got one of your pawns in front of your king, very much offside right now. There's a lack of a B pawn there. I don't think queenside is particularly attractive either. White does have some long-term king safety issues that they need to talk about.
Okay, and decision made, though, by Nodirbek. Just as you say it, he castles, and it isn't a happy decision. I think it was out of necessity. There was simply nowhere else to go for the White King. But it is that H5 pawn that could come under fire in the very near future from a Black Knight. Any endgame, that pawn likely to drop off. This is a dream for Fabiano, by the way. It's enough imbalanced to give him hope for a comeback.
So this is interesting because, you know, we wanted to see Fabi come out of the gate swinging. It was actually Nodirbek who was throwing everything at Fabi straight out of the opening. But actually, the way everything's resolved, the way the chips have fallen, this is looking really good for Fabi.
And that's one of the aspects of Nodirbek's games that I've noticed so many times, where he just sometimes unnecessarily, forcefully takes the fight to his opponent. He's sort of itching to create something on the board. It also makes, you know, the Nodirbek immortals happen, but at the same time, sometimes can backfire. In this match, there was no need for him to completely go all out with that H-pawn, which now ends up becoming a weakness. With Black, the ball was in Fabi's court. How was he going to create chances? Now he's got a clear, direct target on H5 whenever the knight jumps to F6.
And this was the C3 Sicilian, the Alapin Sicilian, and I've been playing this myself since childhood. I would say that this is a very bad version for White because you do not have an attack. Normally with this pawn structure, we saw wince there from Nodirbek. You need some action against the Black King, but the more trades that happen, I think Fabi will happily allow this light squared bishop trade. The closer Black gets to being able to take advantage of White's pawns in the middle of the board, the fact that they're loose. Look at that White H pawn now, vulnerable. And yeah, Nodirbek, we've been here before so many times. He doesn't have a gear shift. That's the one thing that maybe needs to develop over the next few years. There have been so many times he's nearly won these big tournaments. Tata Steel Masters twice. He lost with White in the final round, only needing a draw to bank at least a share of first place because he just goes for it. And this is a case of going for it when you don't necessarily need to.
You know what that produces, though, David? That produces crowd favorites. I mean, that produces someone that you can get behind for years and know you will always have someone to cheer for. Oh, you just need a draw? Yeah, whatever. I'm going for... Who doesn't love... Like, that is a champion's attitude, right? You cannot fault him for that.
Absolutely. Nodirbek has a lot of fans, but he probably would have had a lot more tournament wins as well if you can get that gear shift in, you know, if you can just hold back when it's necessary. I mean, but just like you said, it makes it so entertaining to watch it. But then sometimes you don't always have to play for the galleries.
I'll tell you what, it's great for Armageddon. So maybe if we save it for Armageddon and then just reel things back a little bit until we get to that point, maybe. He's found an interesting way to defend H5, getting rid of the knight in between. And we're certainly trying to keep how dynamic this position is. You can tell he's still constantly fighting.
Oh, but strategically, this is a real struggle now for Nodirbek. Firstly, there is a bishop hit. And a pawn as well, potentially, if you move that bishop away, will fall prey to the Black Knight. Secondly, the Black Knight might just come back and gobble up the H5 pawn in the near future, and the Black Rooks are going to centralize. What's on those files? It is targets. It's all about the weaknesses of White's army. Structurally here, Nodirbek is living life on the edge.
It was just so unnecessary for him to do all of this. With the white pieces, all you need to do is try and shut down the game. You know, you try to keep things solid. You try to sort of let your opponent take those risks, if at all he can afford to. But here, Nodirbek's just made his life so incredibly difficult, and the clock speaks of it. The first game, Nodirbek was the one who's putting pressure, never behind on the clock. And right now, already more than a 2-minute deficit, and that's not even his biggest problem.
Right? Like, basically 6 minutes into this game, and he's now struggling with the white pieces. It slightly boggles the mind, especially when he won game number 1 in such emphatic fashion, only needing a draw to advance here.
Yeah, sometimes you do need to be cynical, and I think he'll be kicking himself for the way this opening has turned out. Of course, he wanted to win, he wanted to do it in style, bank it, Nodirbek, take Fabi down twice, but now he is suffering in this endgame. Double question mark, by the way, given to White's knight retreat. I think there were no good options there, maybe just making things slightly easier for Fabiano, who's going to double up his rooks against the backward c-pawn. This one is a huge target in the next few moves.
You've got all these light squares to play on, right? That knight retreat also leaves the rook with your idea to slide over to the square that it just did. Rook c8, but also rook a4 in the air, targeting both weaknesses. So again, this is just a beautiful strategic and instructive play by Fabi, where he's now rerouting his knight to a square where it can get to c3, more protected from d5. As Nodirbek jumps in with his own knight, inviting the black rook to slide over to attack the other weakness.
There he goes. Fabi has his eyes all over the board. 2 pawns up for grabs now. You can't save both of them. The white A pawn, the white H pawn. Again, stylistically as well, Nodirbek, it's almost similar to the game he lost against Magnus yesterday. It's only rooks and minor pieces left. It's all about pawn structure, all about these long-term decisions. He's a very instinctive player, Nodirbek, but normally that means going for the opponent's king, and that's impossible here. He defends his A pawn. But Fabi doesn't even rush to capture the pawn on the other side of the board.
It's not going anywhere. It can barely be defended. You know, you push the G pawn, black will swap the knight and then win that pawn. So it's impossible to keep that guarded. He keeps the pressure. He just keeps on improving his pieces. Right now, what Nodirbek really wants to do is push his C pawn to open up the bishop, to try to control more of the light squares. But that comes with its own set of problems. Pawns falling over the board, the knight being traded, rook takes pawn.
This is a similar feeling to Nodirbek's first game against Magnus yesterday, where it wasn't necessarily completely and utterly busted on the board just yet. It was more the lack of breathing space to come up with a plan, because you're either completely reactive or there's nothing for you to do. You can't find better squares for your pieces, and you just start to wonder a little bit, and that's when those chances for your opponent inevitably appear. In this case, there will be a material deficit. That pawn is not going anywhere except the graveyard on h5, and even if that pawn drops, okay, that's a tempo. What can I do with this tempo to revive my position and get my pieces to work a little bit more harmoniously with each other? There's no obvious answer to that question either.
Yeah, there's no weaknesses to attack in Black's camp. Normally, in order to get counterplay, you need some long-term hope. Here, he improves his bishop. Now I expect Fabiano to finally cash in and go a pawn up. There we go. The H-pawn does drop. I'm slightly impressed by Nodirbek's poker face. There was a small frown, but in general, he'd been keeping a straight face up until then. I would be almost resigning in this position. But okay, here we go. He hopes to push his C-pawn forward for glory.
He does, but you know, that pawn might not survive too long. The knight's a defender. You could go bishop takes knight and pick up that c4 pawn. And on the way, also defend any threats of the black knight on the edge getting trapped, as you laterally protect the g4 square from there. So, Fabiano, on the way to pick up his second pawn, if he'd like to.
Yep, Fabi, again, might not rush. He might just re-centralize the black knight, but that looks like a very convincing variation, Tanya. And Fabiano is very concrete as a player. It's all about the calculation with him, and the black knight does have a safe square to jump into if need be. Can't even attack it right now. 2 pawns to the good. 1 pawn, you can defend such endgames. 2 pawns feels like too much.
If it wasn't for that, if the black knight was trapped on the edge of the board, maybe the counterplay here would be interesting. It would really shake things up in this game, but Fabi has everything calculated, and this is looking like again, very similar to that first game we saw yesterday against Magnus. It's a slow chokehold of a position where we are denying the opportunity to have any sort of counterplay.
Absolutely, and that's the hardest situation to be in. You know, even if you're down material, if you can play for some tricks, if you can try to get some initiative in, if you've got pieces, that gives you hope. But here you're just suffering for nothing. You know, you feel like you're delaying the inevitable. For Fabi, absolutely a dream. I mean, Nodirbek pretty much has gifted him this comeback win with the black pieces. Fabi did not have to earn it. He didn't have to work for it.
And although this wasn't an immediate knockout, it wasn't a miniature 18, 20 move game, it's felt very one-sided. Nodirbek's just not been in it. It was a disastrous opening, ultimately. And just as was the case for Fabiano with the white pieces, it feels like they're both struggling with white. Here we go, Fabiano just defending everything. He'll soon try to relocate that black knight back into the action. If the black knight ever gets towards the center, game over.
That's a big idea, you know, that knight on h5, pick it up, put it on d5, and you would be super happy with that. The a pawn, the b pawn will start marching up. There are ideas of king f5 also trying to activate it, get to the e5 weakness. Meanwhile, what is Nodirbek setting up? Because he needs to find his defenses. He's hoping that if the black king moves towards the left side, the white rook can swoop over, start targeting the h6 pawn. So that's a defensive resource he's counting on.
For now, though, the black knight does retreat. He's trying to crack open a square for that knight to use the f5 square, so he's trying to trade pawns, Fabiano. Here, Nodirbek needs to somehow try and keep that door shut. The black knight, for now, is not well placed, cannot move forward, but it just takes 2 moves. Fabiano should be in time here. Nodirbek struggling on the board, 2 minutes down, as well as 2 pawns down.
And this is the move you really want to make sure the black knight doesn't come into play, but then you have to pay for consequences here, and that is more material on the board. Comes in with a check, about to pick up the 3rd pawn in the game.
And suddenly there is no opposition to the pawns on the A and B file for Fabi. This is looking very strong indeed. He might even choose to go on the other side of the board and either take or push, probably take. There's absolutely no rush to resolve things there because suddenly weaknesses are appearing everywhere.
And finally, Nodirbek leans back, breathes out. He knows he's doomed here. He's just awaiting his fate. And he must be psychologically getting ready for that Armageddon. It's all gone wrong for him in this game. There is a capture. Fabi now starting to eliminate pawns. Flashy move. Bishop takes pawn. There is a pin on the A file. But Fabiano will not fall for any tricks. He's going to transform his advantage. He's going to go to the other flank.
And he doesn't trade the rooks. He picks up that 2nd pawn. Now the black knight has a free way to jump wherever it does want to. Knight f5 would be a good start. You could start with some checks and rolling the pawn up the board as well. Fabi's going to make a comeback in this one for sure. Nodirbek knows it, but it's also a good strategy to not just give up. You know, you keep fighting. You're also kind of getting your mind ready to the eventuality that this is going to be a reset. You're giving yourself time to calm down, as you even know that this is, in fact, headed towards a loss if you're Nodirbek.
Exactly, and you can't afford, as the player who's losing on the board, you don't get the same time to reset because you have to constantly be thinking, has my opponent accidentally left the door open? Have I got a resource here that might enable me to come back? Whereas if you're the side that's winning, hopefully, unless you make a blunder, you're going, actually, I've got the time now to rest and reset, and this will hopefully give me an advantage in the next game.
Let's not forget what happened in the very first match here, right? Jan Nepomniachtchi making that big comeback against Esipenko from a completely busted position. So miracles do happen. But again, this is the kind of position where those miracles perhaps are even harder to appear simply because there are such few pieces, such little margin for error here.
Yes, and Fabiano might be clinical here, drop his rook back to the 5th rank, offer a trade. If the trade doesn't happen, he will win the white central pawn. 2-pawn advantage should be enough to secure the victory if the rooks are off the board here. Fabiano just doing some last-minute calculations. The clock as well, I think that's one reason not to resign. Good tip for everyone at home. If you're playing no increment chess, try and be ruthless. There we go, rooks off the board. And Fabiano getting ever closer. Wei Yi also saved a game against Hikaru where the computer gave +6 for his opponent. So stranger things have happened.
And Fabi there setting up a trap, not letting the king march up. That would have been a fork, so Nodirbek had to waste time with getting the bishop. And you look at Nodirbek, you see he is actually getting ready for that Armageddon. You know, he's kind of preparing mentally for it. He realizes that with the white pieces, he just let slip of this game. You know, he just never got it going. It was worse for him after the first 10 moves.
Here we go, the black king's got out. The black d-pawn is going to sprint forward and make a new queen. We're going to see it unfold. White's bishop, if it ever moves, will drop another pawn. Fabiano moments away now of forcing the Armageddon.
This one's going to be a reset. And the thing for Nodirbek is there was no need to do that. It wasn't even a fight for him, you know? Needing only a draw. And you can look at him. He's not thinking about how do I save this position because that's not even possible. And Fabiano Caruana takes it to the Armageddon.
So there we go. 1-1. Caruana takes the point back. And after a very interesting game number 2, where Abdusattorov continued to come out swinging, maybe that backfired a little bit here, but let's not take away from Fabi, who seized the opportunity with both hands, played very clinically, and absolutely gave no breathing room to his opponent.
It's clear his strategy there, Fabiano, to get the queens off the board as early as possible, to make it very slow, very strategic. That paid off. That's what he's going to be aiming for in the next game. Nodirbek, meanwhile, should be hoping to get much more active, dynamic positions. That's what got him the victory in the first game.
This just felt like a game which was Nodirbek's to lose and not as much as Fabi's to win. Just from the start, everything going wrong. But then, very professionally converted every moment of the way, taking every single advantage of all the inaccuracies that Nodirbek made, all those pawn weaknesses, and finally wrapping it up with precision in that endgame.
He is being very professional here, very much the hitman in this matchup. And we'll be going to an Armageddon. Let's talk a little bit more about that when we come back, but I am very curious to know who is favored and who is going to be bidding the lowest amount of time. Players submitting their bids now, folks, and when we come back after this break, it's all to play for.
What's up, everybody? I'm Trevor, joined with Mike, the guest specialist, and he has the spicy microphone. The point of the segment is simple. I'm going to try to challenge you to give me the hottest, spiciest takes the chess world has ever seen.
I have been duly advised.
Okay, so let's start with a tough one. Which player is the most overrated versus pre-tournament expectations?
Well, I got to go with a friend of mine, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave.
Okay.
I expected him to go really far. He's even beaten Magnus one-on-one before, but he didn't get that chance, or he's already out. Doesn't get to play Magnus
Maxime,
either.
I got to play with him earlier. He sucks at the mini-games here as well. Okay, which player is the most underrated versus pre-tournament expectations?
Well, here's the thing. I asked a lot of the players before the event, and a lot of them named Nihal Sarin because of his blitz specialty.
Okay.
And he didn't do that well on day one, but he crushed today. So he's a lower rated, but he's so fast it kind of makes up for it. So I'm going to go Nihal.
I want to ask some quick fire questions. Which country produces the best chess players?
USA.
Which player has made the biggest mistake?
In this tournament?
Yes.
Wei Yi for trying to actually beat Nakamura instead of beating him on the clock by making random moves.
Will anybody beat Magnus Carlsen? That means no. He wants to say no, but he's not brave enough.
Quick shot. Yes. There is no shot of me answering that question.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
And it's better for chess if Magnus stays in.
Okay, and let's talk about the tournament format. Is it the most brutal chess format that you've seen?
Absolutely. I've been in this game for a long time, and the no increment playing under the Klieg lights, it's a big deal.
On behalf of the entire broadcast team, you represent everyone on air, including your peers who are going to watch this.
Yes.
Who's going to be in the finals, and what will be the final score for the champion?
Oh boy, who's going to be in the finals? Okay, I'm not going to pick against Magnus because it's like picking against Tiger Woods 15 years ago.
So who's his opponent, and how many games will it take? What will the score be?
Okay, first of all, Magnus versus Hikaru breaks the internet.
Okay.
And so if you pick anything other than that, you're rooting against the growth of chess.
And you're saying Magnus is going to win. Come on, be brave.
I'm going to say Magnus likes...
To the camera.
Magnus likes to win everything at least once. I'm afraid if he wins this year, he doesn't come back next year, but we all know he's going to come back both years anyway. So let's go Nakamura.
You're going Nakamura.
Welcome to the most exciting format in chess, Armageddon, the ultimate tiebreaker. Armageddon grants White more time on the clock, but in return, White must win. A draw secures Black the match point. White will start with 10 minutes. Each player submits a confidential bid with the amount of time that they are willing to play with to take Black and get those coveted draw odds. The lowest bid gets to play Black and plays with the amount of time that they bid. The opponent gets the full 10 minutes. Let the Armageddon commence.
Welcome back to Chess at the Esports World Cup. It is Armageddon time. Caruana versus Abdusattorov. One of these players will get to move into the qualifying decider match in their group. The other will have his key crushed on this stage after the end of this game. Both players with one game apiece, incredibly different styles. And now we move to an Armageddon. David, Tanya, we were talking about this before the break. Who is favored in an Armageddon? Who do we want to bid lower and get black?
Both sides, one with black, both very one-sided games. I think they both want the draw odds in this one.
I would agree with that. You know, at the start we said Nodirbek is the one whose odds would increase in the Armageddon, but with the momentum shift of what's happened in round 2, this is going to be anyone's match.
One word answer from both of you. Are we getting into 6-minute territory? Are we going below 7 minutes here? Yes or no?
I don't think so. Fabiano needs the time on his clock. I think Nodirbek would be happy with white.
Tanya?
I agree. No, 6 is just too low for the black pieces.
All right, well, I can reveal the results are in, and my goodness, what a close one this was. Fabiano Caruana will be starting with the black pieces after bidding 7 minutes and 12 seconds to Nodirbek Abdusattorov's 7 minutes, 16 seconds. It was 4 seconds in it. I feel like they knew the wavelength each other was on, but it is Fabi who will have draw odds.
Yeah, unless your name is Hikaru Nakamura, anything under the 7-minute mark feels risky, and ultimately I think Fabiano very happy, just judging by the way he handled that last black game, to get the draw odds. But 7 minutes, Tanya, if Nodirbek can keep more tension, he's going to have his chances, surely.
100%. That is the closest Armageddon bid we've seen here at the EWC, you know, with just a 4-second mark. Yes, he gets the black pieces, but Fabi's also been under pressure on the clock. Nodirbek, you know, he's locked in. He knows that the second game was his to give. He made so many inaccuracies. It almost felt like two different Nodirbeks in game 1 and game 2.
Right.
He's got to channel the one that appeared at the start of the day.
But here's the problem, and I love this. This is esports drama mode. I'm here for it. Nodirbek now needs to win on command. He's got the white pieces. He has to win on command, though. He had the white pieces and played like he needed to win on command in game number 2. Look where that got him. So you're saying he needs to channel game 1, Nodirbek, but is that even going to be possible?
Wait for your chances, you know, don't rush them so early on. I think he has to play on the clock. It's so important for him to keep up the pace. Take those big decisions, those brash decisions when Fabi's down to his final few minutes, when it becomes difficult to make those critical decisions. With Fabi, you have to play against the clock and not try to rush through things.
Sometimes it's easier to play aggressive chess, that kind of win-on-demand chess, when in the back of your mind, you know a draw isn't enough. In the previous one, it felt like he was caught in those two minds. He was unsure. He kind of went forward, took a step back, and it rebounded.
I completely agree with what you guys are saying, but I'm also going to counter that with an observation. Whenever Fabi played something that Nodirbek maybe wasn't expecting, you do see him sit back in his chair, think, and tank a bit. His ability at that point to go, no, you know what? These are two moves. They're both good. Let's just play one to keep the time pressure on Fabi. I'm sure he's capable of doing that, but we haven't seen that from him so far.
Not yet. He'll need to show that to us here and now. Nodirbek, I wonder what opening he's going to go for. It needs to be something different to what we just witnessed.
I would be surprised if it's another Sicilian Alpin that we see on the board, or even if it is, he's going to try and switch it up and not go all Alpha Zero so early on as you wait for the first moves. I mean, the tension on this with what's on the line with Magnus, his teammate for Fabi, already through to the quarterfinals. He wants to be there too, and for Team Navi, their hopes only on Nodirbek Abdusattorov.
All right. So we're going to get the game up in just a moment. Remember, Fabi bid 7 minutes and 12 seconds, thereby winning draw odds. So what that means, of course, is that Nodirbek will start with 10 minutes on his clock. Fabiano Caruana starts with 7 minutes, 12 seconds, and he has draw odds. If the game ends in a draw, that counts as a win for Fabi. That counts as a win for Team Liquid. So it is absolutely of critical importance that Nodirbek wins this on command with the white pieces.
That's just the name of the game when it's Armageddon. And I will say, you know, we speak so much about the momentum shift. Nodirbek did take a crushing victory in game 1. It looked like a complete Nodirbek show. But with Fabi getting that opportunity and going ahead to convert that, does the momentum move towards Fabi? And we've got a lot of moves coming in.
Oh my goodness. Here we go.
Here we go. We have had the game starting. It's been been a lightning fast beginning to this game as we see all the pieces on the board until the moment we jump in. Knight takes bishop. There's a small imbalance. This came from the Italian game. And against someone with Italian heritage like Fabiano Caruana, will this prove to be an inspired strategy? Now blowing open the center, Nodirbek Abdusattorov.
What on earth happened on the clock? You know, with Nodirbek starting with almost a 3-minute advantage, we're talking about an opening, the Italian, which has been played so many times, still in the early stages, he's just let go of half of that clock advantage.
Fabi's used less than 1 minute. So, like, Nodirbek here has clearly had a big think somewhere. That is very interesting indeed.
Yeah, it looks like he tanked for a while, a bit earlier in the game. We'll check if those clock times are correct. But for now, Fabiano, burning too much time himself, needs to decide what to do. Does he trade pawns in the center? Does he just sit there and set up the barricades? He's facing the bishop pair. He does open things up, though, the white queen jumping out.
And this is so tempting to do, right? Not to keep the tension when a draw is enough for you. You're always attracted to the possibility of trying to liquidate matters, and Fabi goes and does it for the second time, offering a second pawn trade. If this one's captured, the side pawn will come into the game, also destroying Nodirbek's pawn formation. I think he has to keep the tension, Nodirbek. You can't go for pawn takes pawn here.
So you're saying that Fabiano, Team Liquid, needs to liquidate this position. It does look like a wise idea. He wants to maybe trade off more material. There is a chance to win a pawn. You can grab the b4 pawn right now due to a pin along the a file, but maybe not the most important pawn to win. You would end up with tripled pawns for black. Fabiano more likely to be looking in the center of the board for the action.
And Nodirbek's eyeing some tricks of his own. In a must-win situation, you've got to do that. Pawn takes pawn could potentially also be met by the queen and the bishop lining up. That's a tender spot on f7. Right. Queen b3. You'd hit the pawn on b4, but more importantly, the one next to the black king.
That is the weak spot, the weakest spot in chess in general, in most openings. So Fabiano will be watching out for that one. I would assume that he's also looking at bringing his bishop out to neutralize that idea in the near future.
And we're talking about the queen potentially moving across, participating in an attack here, but also bear in mind the queen is one of the defenders of the pawn on e4 as well. So white's position isn't without its loose points. Interestingly, shoving the pawn forward here certainly brings about a different set of challenges. And it's Fabi now trying to keep things a little bit more open, a little bit more flowing. He certainly feels like he has a lot more space in the game than the game that he lost.
Yeah, that's a great move from Fabiano, trying to clarify, clear the board here, going for some exchanges, but it cost him over 1 minute. That's a huge time investment there. We see bishop for knight trade. We'll see maybe the queen's leaving the board. Which way will Nodirbek recapture? At least now Fabiano, he knows he's got less material to deal with. He's getting closer to the endgame, getting close to safety.
Fabi is a calculation beast, and that's what he did. He took those few extra seconds, but went for the most direct, concrete line, which forces pieces and pawns off the board. You know, if you take that knight with the pawn, the rooks will come off, the black knight will start jumping to attack the queen. Let's point out, pawn takes pawn still in the air. Fabi playing for the activity. He brings his queen to a very strong square. Watch out, moves that rook that's being attacked on a1.
Yep, the white rook is hit. Not so many squares to use to defend it. You could maybe push your pawn up to block as well, but more likely the white rook is going to move. There we go. And the black bishop now ready to jump out. Fabiano did sacrifice a pawn, though, in that little melee, in that little transformation, and he needs to find a way to compensate for it.
I'm getting flashbacks here, seeing another knight move back to the back rank, but this is obviously a very different game and a very different position to the one that we saw before. The amount of activity and the amount of freedom with which Fabi is playing right now, it just feels comfortable for him compared to how we saw before. Take a look at the time on the clock. He is still down, but he's not down by that much. He's managed to narrow the gap a bit to 1.5 minutes, but he has to continue to do that because you don't want 2 minutes versus 30 seconds, for example.
This is dangerous for Fabi. I mean, Nodirbek has that extra pawn. It's the opposite color bishop complex as well, so the majors are super important. That white bishop is about to land on the longest diagonal. Bishop on b2. You know, there's a tender spot on g7. Looking at setting up some batteries as well. And of course, the material advantage. I think this gives Nodirbek quite a bit to fight for in a must-win.
Yeah, great start for him. Fabi again in the tank. It looks like Fabiano, he's playing 2 or 3 quick moves, spending a minute. 2 or 3 quick moves, spending a minute, but you cannot get away with that rhythm in Armageddon chess. Nodirbek looks locked in. Fabiano needs to get some activity. Maybe it's a rook move. Maybe he's going to reposition the black queen that's about to be hit by the white bishop. Either way, you need to be quick.
you can think about trying to trade the queens off. Queen d4 is a move that comes to mind here. But move, Fabi, 3.5 minutes, and there's a lot of moves left to be played. If it comes to it, a player like Nodirbek Abdusattorov, he's an assassin. He's not going to shy away from the possibility of trying to flag the world number 3.
Queen d6. We spoke earlier today about queens maybe not the best blockaders of pawns, David, but in this particular instance, he wants to try and stop the activity Stone Cold. Remember, not necessarily the greatest mindset to be in, but Fabi isn't here to blow Nodirbek off the board with amazing moves and a crushing victory. A draw will suffice.
Yep, this queen, not a happy blockader, but she's aiming to corral the white d-pawn, the extra pawn in this scenario for Nodirbek. It's on a light square. It can get hit by the black knight as well in the near future, and he cannot connect his pawns, Nodirbek. A very important detail, he cannot play c4 in the near future due to the black bishop's pressure on this diagonal. So he's aiming to regain the material. A very good move from Fabiano. He keeps playing these very kind of principled moves, very correct moves, but costing him the time. Nodirbek frozen as well. This is definitely the calm before the storm, before the scramble.
Let's talk briefly about the white plan to win, because frankly, we have to win at all costs. Where do you see the pieces living on the board? If white had 2 or 3 free moves to place pieces wherever you want, where are we going?
He's showing us the way, right? He activates that rook, the rook lift, and it'll come to the center of the board if it needs to defend that pawn. The c2 pawn can also move forward to really consolidate that d5 stronghold that you have, the passer that you have in the position right now. So a really nice find that. The bishop is about to land on b2 as well. And as long as Nodirbek can keep the pressure, keep the pieces on the board, not trade too much, the biggest plan is flag Fabi.
Yeah, that was a great decision, by the way. That white rook is super strong. Fabiano hunting down white's central pawn now. Heart rate's rising. We saw Nodirbek shaking his leg. That's his trademark. He's always about the adrenaline. Even in longer classical games, he wants to get the blood pumping. Fabi, though, with the threats. If that white d-pawn drops off, a draw is very likely, even in an endgame, even if white has an extra pawn. So he holds it. Nodirbek here. The black knight retreats, but the white pawn can continue to advance.
Yeah, I'm looking at that, and my first thought, my 3-minute chess brain instantly went, oh, you're attacking it? Push. Push harder. And when you're done, push again, because this is looking potentially promising now for Nodirbek.
It's looking more than that. The pawn is not the only one that's going to push. After d6, the knight is forced to move away. The rook is going to land on d5 with a double attack, hitting the queen and the bishop. Nodirbek surprised as well. Has Fabi missed this?
He spotted it. Nodirbek, he's going to move his pawn forward. There we go. And the black knight had to move. Now stepping forward with the rook is a double attack, hitting the black queen and bishop, but the black queen can drop back and defend. Fabi, though, losing 2 moves. He moved his knight back, had to move it again, opening up his king.
Does rook d5 still... I guess the queen can drop back to... Does c8 work?
It's the only square that stays connected to the bishop, but what's the follow-up that Nodirbek has right now? He comes in with the knight instead?
Is the follow-up pushing the pawn again?
It will be soon.
Yeah.
First, the black queen is hit. Big decision. He trades off that pesky white knight. But once this bishop is recaptured, it's going to be so tough now to get to white's extra pawn. That d-pawn is going to just throttle the black pieces here, paralyze the black army, as the black rook acts as a blockader now. But Fabi does not look happy. At least he's closed the time deficit to within a minute.
Yeah, and that is progress. You know, you place all your pieces on the light squares. The white bishop cannot attack a single piece of Fabiano Caruana's right now. He still needs to make progress. Nodirbek's spidey senses are tingling right now. He's looking at ideas. There are pawns on the king side that can be picked up. He's first lining up the rook to slide over to the G line. Stopped.
Maybe a missed opportunity. The white bishop could have actually sacrificed itself for a pawn to blow open the black king a couple of moves ago.
What?
Now the black knight is jumping. Now the white bishop sidelined and about to get hit. This feels wrong. Question mark attached. The black knight can jump. There we go. Hitting the white queen, hitting the white bishop. Fabi's not out of this yet.
No, he's back in the game. He's back in the fight. Now that the knight has improved, he needs only a draw in the position. It's still material balance. It's 1 pawn down, but that pawn is blocked. Now it is a material balance. As the queen steps in, Nodirbek has lost most of his advantage.
And this feels, yeah, it feels like it's things are starting to subside a bit. They're starting to chill a bit. Abdusattorov down to just under 3 minutes. Fabi now starting to play a little bit faster, 2.25 minutes on the clock. So about 30 seconds separating the two players right now. But it does feel like the biggest bit of danger is over. That said, that's only so far, because the biggest danger to come is going to be on the clock if we do get into a blitz finish.
And as long as that D6 pawn is alive, Fabi is the only one who needs to be careful. He's desperately trying to get the queens off the board, but Nodirbek will not let that happen. He gives a check is blocked. Oh my god,
Whoa.
He's made a blunder.
And now the white rook can step forward. This idea we saw earlier, the
Same
rook could
theme.
have gone to d5, winning the f5 pawn. There were tricks, discovered attacks there. That would have given white a winning advantage, but still in the air.
It's the same theme as we saw earlier, and again, earlier he didn't immediately play it. Now he also didn't immediately play it. King g2 instead. Are there options to play it on the next move? No, there aren't, but still maintaining the advantage. King coming up to f3. We're getting really aggro here.
Wow, leading from the front, that king, the white king, might continue its journey up the board to the f4 square, but for now, Fabiano is trying to lock down that flank. He is paralyzed, immobilized that black rook, so Fabi just has to wait.
Fabi just has to wait, and Nodirbek has to find a way to get his queen onto the other side to infiltrate black's camp. It starts with a check, falls back, now attacks the b6 pawn. Black is just overloaded. The rook on d7, what rook is even that? Absolutely out of the game. Essentially, Nodirbek has an extra rook in the position.
Great call there from Nodirbek. He's going to use his king as a defender. Now the white queen is going pawn hunting. The black queen caught on the wrong side of the board. You can safely pick up this pawn now and restore your earlier material advantage. That's just the first step for Nodirbek. He still needs the breakthrough. Later it will be improving the white rook. But for now, job one done. He's a pawn up, minute up on the clock.
And crucially, the plan is getting simpler. We now have a situation where we can start to create multiple weaknesses. We can look at pushing the A-pawn and make things uncomfortable on two fronts at once. There are very few complications that can happen now to prevent this win.
It's getting closer. The black king out in the open. The white pawn so strong right now. Just no easy moves for Fabiano. That's going to be such a big handicap for him in this ensuing time scramble.
And Nodirbek is one of the strongest players in the world when it comes to the dynamics of shuffling around with the major pieces on the board. Somehow, when it's him, it always lands at the right spot. He goes for a queen trade, completely in control in the position.
Now the black rook is caught in two minds. If it ever moves, if it ever takes the D pawn, then the B pawn will be the one that falls. This rook endgame, it was the best position Fabi's had in ages, but it's all about the clock now.
It's all about the clock, and White's king's coming forward. Lost on the board, lost on the clock. Fabiano Caruana about to get eliminated. If Nodirbek can finish this off, he's so close. Picks up another pawn on the other edge. The h5 pawn weak.
This is so easy now for Nodirbek. He's going to slide his rook back to the 5th rank. Everything's defended. Black is a pawn down. The black king is off on a limb, doing nothing offside. He's going to break through on this right flank. The king is coming. Fabiano is desperate now.
Beautiful move. That a5 pawn could not have been picked up. King g6 would have won the rook. The king is anyway coming there. Fabiano Caruana knows it. He's giving up hope right now. The last few moments here at the EWC for the world number 3.
Last bit of calculation. Nodirbek wonders what will happen if the rooks come off. White is ahead in the race though. The white king's going to step out of the way, or this pawn is going to push, and the race will begin. And there we go. Nodirbek fist pumping. Fabiano resigns.
Nodirbek Abdusattorov, Navi make their way into the quarterfinals with an Armageddon victory over Team Liquid's Caruana. Absolutely incredible stuff in this final match. There were so many twists and turns. They're very, very solid compared to the topsy-turvy nature of some of the other matches we saw, but nonetheless, a thrilling conclusion.
Nodirbek, he took control. He won a pawn early. He nursed it to an advantage. Fabiano, it always felt like he was fishing for the compensation, not quite up to finding that activity, just always a bit lower on the clock as well, and ultimately eliminated.
The whole match was a roller coaster, and the one driving it was Nodirbek Abdusattorov. Gets that first match win in, takes too many chances, loses the second game, and this Armageddon, beautiful technique here in display. Never easy to be in a must-win, with those finishing touches eventually going into this endgame, pushing the pawn, realizing both players would queen at the same time, but check, black would lose the queen, and this was the moment Fabi resigned.
And look, it's all about applying that clock pressure as well, right? There were plenty of ups and downs on the position, on the board, but at the end of the day, under a minute plays over a minute makes such a huge difference, especially where there is no increment there. It is brutal, it is cutthroat. This is chess at the Esports World Cup. It's a completely different beast. What a fantastic match that was. Let's go ahead and hear from Nodirbek himself.